For as long as I can remember, Nick Cave has been present in the musical universe. Not just present, but relevant. I recall feeling slightly unnerved as a 13-year-old, unable to look away during his disturbing portrayal of Nick the Stripper on John Torv's music video back in 1983, to being completely swept up by the dark, dingy and distinctly unglamorous visuals for The Mercy Seat in 1988, his tremendous pop crossover with Kylie Minogue in 1995, and his new millennium rock resurgence with Dig Lazarus Dig and the Grinderman albums, to the guaranteed love from the audience every time I cover Into My Arms. And now it seems half of TikTok is regurgitating Red Hand files, but every great frontman must have their guitar-slinging foil. So who was Scotty Moore to Nick's Elvis? Who was Mick Ronson to Nick's Bowie? If you think it begins and ends with Mick, Harvey, Rowland S Howard and Blixa, then you're in for a ride. I've turned up around 50 names of guitarists who've played alongside Nicholas Edward Cave. Did you know he was once accompanied by Mike Campbell of the Heartbreakers, for instance? Or Mick Jones of The Clash? Johnny Depp? Robert Fripp? Guthrie Govan? Am I just making these names up? Let's find out. We've got a lot to get through, so let's dig in. At Caulfield Grammar in 1974, Nick joined a school band that featured both Mick Harvey and John Cocchiavera on guitar. I'll talk about Mick lots, but who was John Cocchiavera? I don't know. I can't find much at all about him, except that he played alongside Nick until they both left high school at the end of 1975. In '76, he rejoined Nick along with another little-known guitarist, Ashley Macavickius, and the year culminated with them playing at the Mount Waverley Battle of the Bands. At this point, both John Cocchiavera and Ashley Macavickius departed. Ashley told me his stint was very short, the reason being, I was a terrible guitarist. Ashley, however, remained an artist, landing a full-time photography job in 1984, eventually setting up his own studio in Balmain. I'll put a link to his website in the description. His night works are stunning. John Cocchiavera's parents soon sent him to the US, at least in part to remove him from the bad influence of his bandmates. John returned from the States in early '77 and penned some more songs with the group. But according to Ian Johnston, in his excellent bio, Bad Seed, Cocchiavera quickly realised his Dave Gilmour-inspired style was no longer a good fit for the increasingly edgy and punk-inflected Boys Next Door. He ceased playing with the band and returned to the US. I'd love to know what happened to John Cocchiavera, if anyone knows. He had a cool goth glam sort of look, kind of like a prototype Noel Fielding, and he had that wicked SG copy. Let's move on to Mick Harvey. Michael John Harvey, born 29 August 1958, took lessons from Melbourne jazz guitar legend Bruce Clark, who wrote this book that I still teach and play from. Yes, John Crozier, I still have your book. Mick Harvey has achieved a lot. Quite aside from the fact that he played whatever instrument was needed alongside Nick Cave, all the way from high school bands in the early 70s through the Boys Next Door, the Birthday Party, and eventually with the Bad Seeds, with whom he played for 25 years before finally parting ways with Cave in December 2009. Aside from all of that, Mick released 4 albums with Crime in the City Solution, 1 with the Wallbangers, and 11 of his own solo recordings. He has produced brilliant albums for the likes of Anita Lane, The Cruel Sea and PJ Harvey. Mick has earned 2 ARIA Awards for Best Original Soundtrack, as well as the 2001 Mercury Prize for Best Album for co-producing PJ Harvey's Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea, an album featuring one of my all-time favourite songs, the incredible Tom York duet This Mess We're In, upon which Mick played bass and organ. He won a 2006 AFI Award for Best Original Music Score for Suburban Mayhem, and then a 2011 Mercury Prize for Best Album for co-producing PJ Harvey's Let England Shake. Mick also received an ARIA nomination for his Chopper soundtrack. The man is an Australian musical demigod. Now, back to our timeline. By July 1977, a 4-piece consisting of Nick Cave and Mick Harvey, along with Phil Calvert on drums and Tracy Pugh on bass, settled on the name The Boys Next Door. The following month, on August 19, this lineup played their first major gig to around 50 people at Swinburne Tech. This gig was recorded by Melbourne radio station 3SW, and you can find it here on YouTube. Mick Harvey is a super competent guitarist for an 18-year-old kid at one of his first gigs. His cover of Alice Cooper's I'm 18 is a great example of his consistency as he pins down the rhythm alongside Tracy's blasting bass, and he seamlessly moves in and out of the guitar solo without sacrificing a note in his role as the sole melodic instrument in the combo. In June 1978, the Boys Next Door recorded their debut album, Door Door, with a 19-year-old Mick Harvey on guitar. The album opens with this cool 8th-note arpeggiated riff. Track 2, Brave Expectations. I really like this intro riff. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It just highlights the difference between those two chords, the E and the G, that the intro is played over, because you've got the G sharp note, then the G note. Yeah, it's clever. This song features some unconventional chord changes, all major chords, but modulating through numerous keys. This is a characteristic Harvey trait on these early tracks. Friends of My World, tasty riff. But it's oddly Maiden-esque because that's played over an A minor to an F major 7, which really, I mean... It's got that Iron Maiden sound, especially when the kick drum pattern comes in. I mean, compare it to Rothschild. Although this is 1978, Maiden's debut album didn't come out until 1980, with Rothschild not being out until 81. Do we think a formative Steve Harris somehow got his hands on a copy of Door Door and was fetishing this groove? I mean, the track even features a doubled guitar in the verses doing the rock guitar chugging. Very metal. The voice opens with a great original sounding riff. It's a bit ska influenced. Side A's final track, Somebody's Watching, starts with this hectic intro riff. Which, when reprised later on in the song, includes this loose-as quarter-note triplet phrase. Before the album was released, the band recruited an interesting, quirky 18-year-old singer, songwriter and guitarist, and as a result would turf out half the tracks that they'd recorded and record a whole new side B with this intriguing young bloke. Introducing Rowland S Howard. Rowland was born in Melbourne in October 1959. He began guitar lessons in his early teens, and after the customary high school band, he formed his first working band, the Young Charlatans. Around this time, Rowland first crossed paths with Nick, whose incisive wit saw him label Rowland a poofter. Working to the same audiences in the same Melbourne suburbs meant that the Boys Next Door came to respect Howard's style, his playing and his songwriting. He was already performing what would become his best-known song, Shivers. Rowland S Howard, along with his trusty Fender Jaguar through his Fender Twin, joined the Boys Next Door in August 78. Let's dig into his efforts on side B of Door Door. First track on side B, After a Fashion. Straight off we can hear an entirely different approach to Mick's. Whereas Mick clearly possesses an ear for melody, the ability to craft a catchy guitar hook, and the clever use of modulating chord progressions, Rowland offers us 2 chords for the entire 4.5 minute song. But with strategic use of space and sparseness, Rowland S Howard plays 6 differing parts over that endless drone of the F sharp minor, to the E. He does this. And this. He also does this. Oh, and he does this. It's also the first track featuring what I'd call a guitar solo, slightly atonal in some of the bends. Dive position is a haunting, twisted waltz based on a C minor to F sharp diminished piano figure. Again, the guitar arrangement is quite sophisticated, and we can hear definite development in the band's tightness in the 2 months since the June recordings. The intro riff to I Mistake Myself is similar to the album's opening track, in that Rowland uses the G sharp to G idea, but this time to illustrate the difference between an E7 and a C. I love the contrasting tonalities he uses to give each guitar its space. The mid-range honk of the main riff versus the trebly thinness of the second guitar part. There are a few interesting parts on this one, like the verse phrases answering the vocals, and that bizarre pre-chorus. There's also a weird-ass twin guitar solo upon the outro that gradually introduces more and more outside notes right up to the song's abrupt conclusion. The album's closer is Rowland's future hit Shivers, a dark introspective gem written when he was a mere 16 years old. This early version receives a very Fripp-esque treatment on the guitar tracks, a la Heroes. The sustained notes and dissonant layers fleshing out this two-chord masterpiece with wonderful textures. Shivers has been covered many times, the highest charting version being released in 1993 by Oz Rockers' The Screaming Jets. Rowland S Howard began guitar lessons in his early teens, and according to brother Harry, he was inspired by progressive rock, glam, Barrett, Roxy, Eno, and lots of David Bowie. As time went by, he found an interest in US underground sounds like the Velvet Underground and the New York Dolls. Next thing I knew, the Stooges and Iggy Pop exploded onto our lounge room. There was punk too, of course. Suddenly we had Anarchy in the UK and I'm Stranded. Along with the guitar, Rowland learned some sax, and at high school formed the excellently named Tootho and the Ring of Confidence, followed by the Obsessions before forming the Young Charlatans in mid-1977 with multi-instrumentalist, composer and producer Ollie Olsen, best known for Max Q, his fabulous collaboration with INXS's Michael Hutchence. We sadly lost Ollie only last October. Around this time, Howard was photographed with school friend Gina Riley. Gina, of course, went on to huge fame as Kim Day from the Aussie comedy Kath and Kim. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the two at least rehearsed together, because Gina is a great singer and was captured here nestled between Rowland and Tootho bandmate Simon McLean. I love uncovering these largely irrelevant nuggets. During late 79 into 1980, the band recorded 10 tracks which would be released in November 1980 as the Birthday Party album. Here are some guitar-centric highlights. Roland's Dorian minor riff from Guilt Parade is fantastic. I mean, I'm presuming it's Howard and not Harvey, purely based on the treble-drenched tone. The album's engineer, Tony Cohen, said that Richmond Recorders Studio was a non-reverberant, acoustically dead design. He said Roland always wanted more treble on his guitar, so I brought in sheets of corrugated iron and made a tunnel covering his amp. The Guilt Parade riff is one of those intros that may be misinterpreted rhythmically, such that when the band enters, we're surprised by the placement of the downbeat. I heard it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. But it's actually like this. Riddle House is crazy stuff. Another 2-chord special, although I'm not really sure what those 2 chords are. I think like a G sharp diminished to a G something. A really interesting use of flattened fifths and diminished triads anyway. Popped into my head when listening to this early stuff was Freaky Styley era Chili Peppers, if you extracted all the funk but left in all the psychosis. The Friend Catcher. Roland is so inventive and challenging to listen to. It culminates with a minute of Howard's screaming reverb-saturated feedback. Something that would become a significant component of the band's live sets. And their virtual title track, Happy Birthday, contains this wicked little group of 7 in the main riff. Long before the album was released, the Boys Next Door packed up and moved to London, leaving behind their old lives and their old band name as they became known as The Birthday Party. Returning to Australia in December, the same lineup recorded their debut album as The Birthday Party, Prayers on Fire, featuring the menacing 5/4 of Nick the Stripper. With its wonderfully simplistic chord part, which I would love to say is simply 6 open strings in standard tuning. But I think it's only strummed from the A down. And I think it features a moving note on the D string, because sometimes we can hear 2 G notes, other times there's a B flat, sometimes there's an F sharp in there. Another cool thing about this one is that the horn line is actually written in 4/4, so its phrasing moves across the bars to unsettle the listener even more. The instrumentation on Capers, that woozy dreamlike guitars weaving in and out of each other's paths. And check out Dead Song, another odd time outing, this time in 9/8 or a quick paced 4/4/5/4. This one sounds to me like both Roland and Mick on guitar. Roland doing those harsh stabbed diminished chords, while Mick plays a riff in 10/8 over the top of that 9/8 groove, becoming gradually further and further out of sync with Tracy Pugh's bass line upon each repeat. Also recorded in 1981 was the Cave and Harvey single Release the Bats, recognised by many as the basis of the goth movement. Although personally I reckon that heavy bass and drum shuffle in A minor is the basis of Paul Kelly's Dumb Things. The Birthday Party's second and final album, Junkyard, was released in July 1982. Several Sins is very reminiscent of Swordfish Trombone era Tom Waits, particularly Howard's verse riff. Similarly, Mick Harvey's 6-inch gold blade, which features a 4/4 guitar riff over the bass and drums' main 5/4 groove. I should rightly say that Swordfish Trombone is reminiscent of Junkyard, as Tom's brilliant album wasn't released until the following year, 1983. Big Jesus Trash Can, another Mick Harvey tune, has a great riff. With a wonky melody over it, which Mick doubled on sax. Rowland's heavily distorted, reverbed riff sits underneath. Around this time, in September '82, Nick joined German female post-punk band Malaria on stage in Berlin. So let's add Malaria guitarist Manon Duursma and her Ibanez Les Paul copy to our list. The Birthday Party also recorded a couple of EPs. The Bad Seed, recorded in October '82 at Hansa Studios in Berlin. Yes, where this happened. And this. The Bad Seed EP consisted of 4 Cave Harvey co-writes, and the next EP, Mutiny, recorded in London in mid-1983, features 6 tracks, 4 of which were co-written by Rowland. Mick Harvey moved on to drums for all 10 cuts. Personally, I love these EPs more than all that came before them. Rowland's playing is incredibly inventive and expressive. Deep in the Woods is an awesome display of his ability to perfectly complement Cave's 5 minutes of morbid raving insanity. I also love Howard's intro riff to Say a Spell. One night during the recording of Junkyard, the band had an impromptu jam session with the Go-Betweens. The result was a song called After the Fireworks, which was released under the name Tough Monks. This, of course, means Nick Cave has performed alongside 2 more guitarists, Aussie indie rock pioneers Robert Forster and Grant McLennan, who were responsible for the classic Streets of Your Town, which just last month, July 2025, was voted into Triple J's Hottest 100 Australian Songs of All Time. A final note on the Birthday Party's final record. The final track, Mutiny in Heaven, features a new guitarist in the form of phenomenal fretzman and fascinating Fritz, Blixa Bargeld, who would go on to be Nick Cave's next guitar-wielding foil. The band first encountered Blixa in Berlin, where he fronted an avant-garde industrial experimental act named Einstürzende Neubauten. The bands crossed paths, and Blixa invited Rowland to contribute some characteristic screeching and squawking guitar sound effects to a song called Thirsty Animal. Blixa goes on to tell that when he was recording in London in 1983, he showed up at a birthday party session at Britannia Row Studios. Apparently, Nick suddenly lost interest in Howard's contributions and wanted Bargeld to play on the title track, using poor old Rowland's guitar and amp. Rowland packed up and left immediately afterwards. And that was it for the Birthday Party, as they morphed into the Bad Seeds. Rowland S Howard didn't really enjoy much commercial success during the 80s, after he was basically left behind in the wake of the Birthday Party to Bad Seeds transition. But I highly recommend checking out his 1999 release, Teenage Snuff Film. The guitars are rich and textured and bewildering and beguiling. His 2009 follow-up, Pop Crimes, is similarly enthralling. Harry Howard's website contains an extremely thorough discography for those interested in diving deeper into Rowland's extensive catalogue. There's a link in the description. Rowland S Howard died in 2009 at age 55 from liver cancer. Such an underrated Aussie guitar hero. In the words of Banjo, writing for music website Sun13, the sound he got out of his guitar was razor sharp, almost all treble and soaked in reverb. It cut through the noise that surrounded it like a knife. He suited the sound he made on stage, looking lean and angular himself. Come back for Chapter 2, featuring more Blixa Bargeld, Die Hout, Barry Adamson, Hugo Race, Edward Clayton Jones, Kid Congo Powers, and some surprises.